Hello my dear viewers, I would like to thank you for watching the video and I wanted to say subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be very grateful and you will not miss new videos. Enjoy the video. My name is Laura Mitchell. I live in a small town in Oregon, surrounded by dense forests and winding back roads. It's the kind of place where nothing much happens and people like it that way. But last weekend, something did happen, something I still can't explain. It started when I took my dog, Scout, for a walk. There's a trail behind my house that winds through the woods, quiet and peaceful. It was late afternoon, the sun filtering through the trees, and I remember thinking how perfect the weather was. Scout was trotting ahead, his tail wagging, when he suddenly stopped. His ears perked up, and he let out a low growl. "What is it, boy?" I asked, glancing around. That's when I heard it, a voice. It was faint, coming from deeper in the woods, but clear enough to send a chill down my spine. It wasn't yelling or panicked, just calm and steady, repeating the same phrase over and over again. "Laura, come here." My heart skipped a beat. At first, I thought it was someone I knew, maybe a neighbor playing a prank, but the voice sounded wrong. It was too familiar. It sounded like me. I stood frozen on the trail, Scout growling low beside me. The voice continued, calm and steady. "Laura, come here." It wasn't just the tone that was off, it was the way it echoed, bouncing through the trees like it came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaking. The forest went silent. No birds, no wind, not even the sound of Scout's growls, just silence. I wanted to turn around and run, but something made me take a step forward instead. Scout barked, tugging at his leash like he wanted to go back. "Hello," I called again, taking another step. That's when I saw it. About 20 feet off the trail, tucked between the trees, was a small wooden structure. It wasn't much, just a crude shack made of mismatched boards, half hidden by overgrown brush. I'd walked this trail dozens of times and had never seen it before. Scout whined, his tail tucked between his legs. I knelt down, rubbing his head. "It's okay, boy, just a quick look." The voice came again, softer now. "Laura, come here." It was coming from the shack. Against every ounce of common sense I had, I stepped off the trail, pushing through the brush until I was standing in front of the shack. The door was slightly ajar, revealing nothing but darkness inside. "Hello," I called, my voice trembling. No response. I reached out and pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, the sound echoing through the quiet woods. Inside, the shack was empty. The floor was dirt, the walls lined with old, rusted tools. A broken chair sat in the corner, and a tattered blanket was crumpled in the middle of the floor. But there was no one there. I turned to leave, but something caught my eye. Scratched into the wood of the far wall, deep and jagged, were the words, "Not Laura." My stomach twisted. Before I could react, Scout barked furiously. I turned to see him staring into the woods, his fur bristling. And then I heard it, the voice again, louder this time. "Laura, come here." But it wasn't coming from the shack anymore. It was coming from the trail. I bolted out of the shack, Scout barking and straining at his leash. My heart was pounding as I stared back at the trail where the voice had come from. "Laura, come here." It was louder now, clear and unmistakable. It sounded just like me, but more distorted, like an old recording played through broken speakers. I couldn't see anyone. The trail was empty, stretching into the woods in both directions. Scout whimpered, pulling back toward the shack like he wanted to hide. I knelt beside him, whispering, "It's okay, boy. We're leaving," but as I turned to head back, the voice came again. "Laura, come here." This time, it was closer. My instincts screamed to run, but something about the voice rooted me to the spot. It was like hearing my own reflection, and the longer I listened, the more unsettling it became. I tightened my grip on Scout's leash and started walking back toward the trailhead, my steps quick and deliberate. The forest felt different now. The sun had dipped lower, casting long, jagged shadows across the path. Even Scout was acting strange, his ears flat against his head, his growls turning into soft, frightened whines. And then I saw it. Up ahead, partially hidden by the trees, was a figure. They were standing still, too far away to make out any details, but there was something disturbingly familiar about the way they stood. I stopped, gripping Scout's leash tighter. "Who are you?" I called, my voice shaking. The figure didn't move, but then they spoke. "Laura, come here." The voice was perfect. It wasn't just mimicking me, it was me. The cadence, the tone, even the hesitation in my words. My stomach churned as the figure stepped closer. Their movements were slow, deliberate, like they were testing each step. I backed away, panic rising. "Stay back," I shouted. The figure stopped. For a moment, the forest was deathly silent. And then they spoke again, softer this time. "Why are you running, Laura?" I didn't answer. I turned and ran. Scout and I tore down the trail, my breath ragged and my legs burning. I didn't dare look back, afraid of what I might see. The voice followed me, growing louder, more insistent. "Laura, come back." It was everywhere now, echoing through the woods from all directions. By the time I reached the trailhead, my lungs were on fire. I stumbled out of the woods, Scout at my side, and collapsed onto the gravel road. The voice stopped. The forest behind me was quiet again, as if nothing had happened. But when I turned back toward the trees, I froze. Standing at the edge of the trail was the figure. And this time I saw their face. It was mine. My heart stopped as I stared at the figure. They weren't just similar to me, they were identical. Same hair, same clothes, even the same small scar on my chin from when I fell off my bike as a kid. It was like looking into a living, breathing mirror. Scout barked furiously, pulling at his leash, but I couldn't move. My double stood at the edge of the trail, their expression blank, their eyes fixed on mine. They raised a hand, mimicking the exact motion I made when I reached for Scout. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice cracking. The figure tilted their head, their lips curling into a faint smile. "Why are you running, Laura?" The voice wasn't distorted anymore. It was my voice, perfect and precise. I stumbled backward, clutching Scout's leash. "Stay away from me," but they didn't move. "You shouldn't have come here," they said, their tone soft, almost sympathetic. "You weren't supposed to see this." "See what?" I demanded. The figure's expression darkened. The echo. Before I could respond, they stepped forward. Their movements were smooth, deliberate, like they were in complete control. I backed away, my pulse racing. "What do you want from me?" The figure stopped, their eyes narrowing. "This isn't about what I want," they said. "It's about what you took." I froze. "What are you talking about? I didn't take anything." They tilted their head again, their smile returning. "You don't remember, do you?" I shook my head, my mind spinning. "I don't know what you're talking about." Please, just leave me alone." The figure didn't respond. Instead, they pointed to the shack in the woods, their smile fading. "You should have stayed on the trail," they said. "Now it's too late." Without warning, Scout lunged forward, barking wildly. His sudden movement snapped me out of my daze, and I turned to run. I didn't stop until I reached my house, slamming the door behind me. My chest heaved as I locked every door and window, my hands trembling. Scout whined, circling nervously near the door. I dropped to my knees, hugging him tightly, but then I noticed something. The woods outside my window were still. I stared at the edge of the tree line, half expecting the figure to emerge. But there was nothing, no movement, no sound, just silence. And then, from somewhere inside the house, I heard it. My voice, "Laura, come here." I turned slowly, my heart pounding. The sound was coming from the hallway where the light flickered faintly. I grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the sound, my breath shallow. "Who's there?" I called, my voice shaking. No response. The voice came again, softer this time. "Laura, come here." I followed the sound to my bedroom, the door slightly ajar. I pushed it open, the flashlight trembling in my hand. The room was empty, but then I saw it. Scratched into the mirror above my dresser were two words, not Laura. Hello my dear viewers, I would like to thank you for watching the video, and I wanted to say subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be very grateful and you will not miss new videos. Enjoy the video. My name is Kate Miller and my life used to be simple. I worked as a nurse at the local hospital in Chicago, raised my son Eric on my own, and spent my free time reading or gardening. That was before last Tuesday, the day I found the bag. It started as a regular afternoon. I had a rare day off and decided to take a walk through Lincoln Park. The air was crisp and the autumn leaves crunched underfoot. I was nearing the south end of the park when I saw a black duffel bag lying just off the path, partially hidden by bushes. At first, I thought someone had lost their gym gear. But when I unzipped it, my breath caught. Stacks of cash, neatly bundled, each marked with a bright blue band. My first thought was to call the police, but then I hesitated. $3 million, there was no mistaking the amount. It wasn't the kind of money you stumbled upon by accident. I looked around. The park was quiet, no one in sight. My hands trembled as I zipped the bag back up. I should have walked away. I should have left it there and forgotten I ever saw it, but I didn't. I took it home. When I got home, I locked the doors, pulled the curtains shut, and set the duffel bag on my dining table. My hands trembled as I unzipped it again, the cash practically glowing under the dim light. $3 million. I didn't know what to do. If I turned it in, the police would ask questions I didn't have answers to. But if I kept it, I sat down, my head in my hands. Eric would be home soon. My son was a college sophomore, studying business. Smart, kind, and a little too good at keeping secrets. I hadn't told him about the money yet, and part of me wasn't sure I should. That night, strange things started happening. It began with a knock at the door around midnight. I froze, staring at the clock. No one visited at that hour, and the neighborhood was usually quiet. Slowly, I crept to the window, peeking out through the curtains. A black car idled across the street, its engine humming. The knock came again, louder this time. "Who is it?" I called, my voice trembling. Silence. I waited a moment, my heart racing, before daring to glance through the peephole. The porch was empty. The next morning, I found a note slipped under the door. It was written in blocky, uneven handwriting. We know you have it. Return the bag or else. My stomach twisted. Whoever had left the money wasn't just looking for it, they knew I had it. I called Eric immediately, desperate for reassurance. Sweetheart, I need to talk to you. Can you come home this weekend? Everything okay? Mom? He asked. I hesitated, my eyes flicking to the duffel bag. It's complicated. I just need to see you. I'll be there Saturday, he promised. I hung up, feeling both relieved and terrified. But as I turned back to the table, my blood ran cold. The duffel bag was gone. I couldn't breathe. The duffel bag, $3 million, was gone. I searched the house, tearing through every room, but it was useless. The bag had been on the table minutes ago, and now it was just gone. The front door was still locked, the windows shut tight. Whoever had taken it hadn't left a trace. I sank onto the couch, my head spinning. What had I gotten myself into? And then my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. You shouldn't have taken what's not yours. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Before I could respond, another text came through. Meet us at the old warehouse on Brighton Avenue. Come alone. I knew the place. It was an abandoned shipping facility on the edge of town, a hot spot for shady deals and late-night fights. I had two choices: go to the warehouse and face whoever these people were, or call the police and risk dragging myself and Eric deeper into this mess. I arrived at the warehouse just after dusk, my heart pounding in my chest. The place was as eerie as I remembered, the building looming against the fading sky. Inside, the air was cold, heavy with the smell of rust and damp concrete. 3 men stood in the center of the room, their faces shadowed under dim overhead lights. One of them held the duffel bag, the black fabric clutched tightly in his gloved hand. You're late, one of the men said, his voice sharp and clipped. I don't know who you are or what you want, I said, my voice shaking. I just found the bag. I didn't mean to take it. The man in the middle stepped forward, his expression cold. Didn't mean to take it, he sneered. You think we're stupid? You think we don't know exactly who you are. What are you talking about? I asked, my stomach twisting. He pulled something from his pocket and held it up, a photograph. It was a picture of Eric. My breath caught in my throat. What does my son have to do with this? The man's smile was cruel. Everything. The man tossed the photograph onto the floor at my feet. Eric's face stared back at me, smiling in his graduation cap. I picked it up, my hands trembling. What do you mean Eric has something to do with this? The man crossed his arms, his expression cold. Your son owes us, big, and instead of paying his debt, he decided to run. Thought he could outsmart us. That's impossible, I said, shaking my head. Eric's just a college student. He doesn't have anything to do with you. The man laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You really don't know your own kid, do you? My chest tightened as he pulled a phone from his pocket. He tapped the screen a few times before turning it toward me. A video began to play. In the footage, Eric sat in a dimly lit room, a stack of cash in front of him. He was laughing, talking animatedly with another young man I didn't recognize. Don't worry, Eric said, grinning. It's a sure thing. The boss won't even know it's gone. The video cut off abruptly, leaving me staring at the screen in shock. No, I whispered. He wouldn't. Believe what you want, the man said, slipping the phone back into his pocket. But your son stole from us $3 million. And when he realized we were on to him, he dumped the bag and disappeared. That's where you come in. I staggered back, my mind racing. Eric had always been secretive, but this. It didn't make sense. You think I know where he is? I asked, my voice shaking. You're his mother, the man said, his tone icy. If anyone knows, it's you, and if you're lying. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying the video over and over again. Eric had always been a bright, ambitious kid. He'd worked hard to get into college, balancing classes with part-time jobs. How could he have gotten involved with people like this? When I walked through the door, I froze. Eric was sitting on the couch, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists. Mom, he said, standing up quickly. We need to talk, you think? I snapped, my voice trembling with anger and fear. Do you have any idea what kind of people are after us? His eyes darted toward the window, his expression panicked. Did they find you? Yes, they found me, I shouted. They showed me a video of you. Eric, what did you do? He rubbed the back of his neck, his shoulders slumping. I thought I could fix it, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You stole $3 million, I said, my voice breaking. How could you even think? I didn't have a choice, he snapped, his voice rising. I owed them money, a lot of money. They said I could work it off, but then they kept raising the stakes. I wanted out. My heart sank as the full weight of his words hit me. My son, the boy I'd raised to be honest and hard-working, had gotten himself into something I couldn't protect him from. You have to fix this, I said, gripping his shoulders. You have to give them back what they want. He shook his head. It's not that simple. Once you're in, you're in. They're not going to let me walk away. A loud knock at the door made us both jump. They're here, Eric whispered, his face pale. The knock came again, louder this time. Eric grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the kitchen. We have to get out of here, he whispered urgently. Eric, stop. I yanked my arm free, my heart pounding. We can't just keep running. They won't stop until they find you. Then what do you want me to do? He snapped, his voice breaking. Hand myself over, they'll kill me, Mom. The fear in his eyes made my chest ache, but I couldn't let him see my doubt. Let me handle this, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Before he could argue, I walked to the door. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, bracing myself for what I'd find on the other side. The man from the warehouse stood there, flanked by two others. His expression was cold, his eyes scanning the room before landing on Eric, who had frozen in the doorway to the kitchen. Good, the man said, a cruel smile tugging at his lips. I see you've saved us the trouble of finding him. Wait, I said quickly, stepping between them. You don't need to hurt him. He'll give you the money back. The man raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. The money, he said, gesturing to the duffel bag one of his men carried. We already have it. My stomach dropped. Then what do you want? An example, he said simply, his smile fading. People need to know what happens when you cross us. He nodded to the man beside him, who pulled out a gun and took a step forward. No, I shouted, panic gripping me. Wait. There has to be another way. The man lowered the gun slightly, tilting his head. What are you offering? I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. But as I looked back at Eric, terrified, shaking, still so young, I knew there was only one choice. "Take me instead," I said, my voice trembling. "I'll do whatever you want. Just let him go." Eric's eyes widened. "Mom, no. Shut up, Eric." I snapped, tears streaming down my face. "You did this, now let me fix it." The man studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed, a low, humorless sound. "Brave," he said. "Stupid, but brave." He motioned for his men to stand down. "Fine," he said. "You'll work for us, but if your boy screws up again..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. They left as quickly as they'd come, taking the bag and my freedom with them. Eric collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he whispered. I sat beside him, pulling him into a hug. "We'll get through this," I said, though I didn't believe it. My life wasn't mine anymore. I'd made a deal with the devil to save my son, and now I had to live with it. Hello, my dear viewers. I would like to thank you for watching the video, and I wanted to say subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be very grateful, and you will not miss new videos. Enjoy the video. My name is Alex Hayes. I live in a quiet town called Green Ridge. Nothing much happens here. It's one of those places where everyone waves at each other but never really knows anyone. Perfectly peaceful, perfectly boring, or at least that's what I thought. This started 3 weeks ago. It was a Saturday night, and I was home alone. My roommate, Josh, was out of town visiting his folks, so I had the house to myself. I remember that night vividly. I was on the couch, half asleep, with an old horror movie playing in the background. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the occasional creak of the floorboards kept me on edge. Classic creepy vibes, right? But I was used to it. Then the phone rang. Not my cell, our old landline, the one we barely ever use. Honestly, I'd forgotten we even had it. The sound jolted me upright. I stared at the phone on the wall, its shrill ring cutting through the silence. Who uses landlines anymore? My first instinct was to ignore it, but something about the timing, almost midnight, made me uneasy. I got up and answered, "Hello." At first, all I heard was static, faint and crackling like an old radio station just out of range. I was about to hang up when I heard a voice, a low whisper that sent chills down my spine. "Do you know what he did?" "Excuse me," I stammered. My heart was racing now. The voice didn't respond, just more static. Then the line went dead. I hung up and stood there for a moment, staring at the phone. Maybe it was a prank call, kids messing around. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That voice, it sounded off. Not robotic, not computerized, just off, like it didn't belong. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't shake the unease. I double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, made sure the house was secure, and crawled into bed, but sleep didn't come easy. Every little noise, the creak of the stairs, the groan of the wind, felt amplified, like something or someone was just outside, waiting. And then, at 3:14 a.m., the phone rang again. I froze, staring at the glowing numbers on the bedside clock. 3:14 a.m. That wasn't a time for casual calls. The landline rang again, sharp and insistent. My heart pounded in my chest. I thought about ignoring it, pretending I didn't hear. But what if it was important? What if something had happened to Josh? That thought pulled me out of bed, each step toward the phone feeling heavier than the last. I picked up the receiver, my voice shaky. Hello. Static. At first, it was just like before, crackling, faint, almost hypnotic. But then, that same voice came through, clearer this time. You don't know what he did. But I do. Who is this? I demanded. My voice cracked. If this is some kind of joke, it's not funny. The voice ignored me, almost like it hadn't heard. You're not safe, Alex. He's coming. Click. The line went dead again. I stood there, gripping the receiver so tightly my knuckles turned white. My head was spinning. Who was he, and why was I not safe? My first thought was to call the police, but what would I even tell them? Some creepy voice on a landline said I wasn't safe. Yeah, that'd go over well. Instead, I did the next logical thing. I called Josh. The phone rang twice before he picked up, groggy and confused. Alex, what's going on? It's the middle of the night. There's someone calling the house. They keep saying weird things about not being safe, about someone coming. Do you know anything about this? I was rambling, panic creeping into my voice. Josh was quiet for a moment. That doesn't make any sense. Who even has our landline number? That question hit me like a punch to the gut. He was right. We never used that number. Never gave it out? I don't know, I admitted, pacing the room now. But something's not right, Josh sighed. Look, it's probably some kind of prank. Lock the doors, keep your phone nearby, and get some sleep. I'll be back tomorrow, okay? I didn't like it, but what else could I do? Yeah, okay, I lied. After hanging up, I couldn't bring myself to go back to bed. I grabbed a kitchen knife, not exactly comforting, but it was better than nothing, and sat in the living room with all the lights on. The hours dragged by. Around 5 a.m., just as the sky was starting to lighten, I heard it. A faint thud from the back of the house. My stomach dropped. I crept toward the noise, knife in hand, every step feeling like it took an eternity. The sound came again, louder this time, a deliberate, almost rhythmic pounding on the back door. When I reached the kitchen, I stopped, staring at the door. The frosted glass pane revealed a shadowy figure on the other side, and moving except for the slow, methodical knocking. Who's there? I called out, my voice trembling. No answer, just the knocking, louder now. I tightened my grip on the knife, every nerve in my body screaming to run, to hide. But before I could do anything, the knocking stopped, then the landline rang. The landline's shrill ring cut through the silence, freezing me in place. My eyes darted between the phone on the wall and the shadow outside the door. I didn't want to answer, but I couldn't just ignore it either. My gut told me it was connected, that the voice and the figure outside weren't coincidences. The knocking had stopped, but the shadow remained. It was unnervingly still, like whoever or whatever it was waiting for me to make the next move. Finally, with trembling hands, I picked up the receiver. What do you want? I demanded, my voice cracking. This time, the voice didn't whisper. It spoke clearly, deliberately. Don't open the door, Alex. My breath caught in my throat. What are you talking about? Who are you? Don't open it. He's not who you think he is. Click. The line went dead. I slammed the receiver down and backed away, my eyes glued to the door. The shadow was still there, motionless. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. I didn't know what to believe. Was this some elaborate prank? Was someone trying to mess with me, or was I in real danger? The silence was suffocating. I needed to do something, anything, to break it. I grabbed my cell phone and dialed 911, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. 911, what's your emergency? There's someone outside my house, I blurted. They've been knocking on the door and I think they're trying to get in. They won't say who they are. Are they still there? The operator asked, her voice calm but firm. I glanced at the door. The shadow was gone. My heart sank. They were, I whispered. But now they're not. Stay on the line with me, the operator instructed. Officers are on their way. Is there a safe place in your house where you can go? I nodded, then realized she couldn't see me. Yeah, I muttered. I'll go to my room. I hurried upstairs, clutching the knife so tightly my hand ached. The operator stayed on the line, asking questions I barely registered. Was the house locked? Did I see any vehicles outside? I answered automatically, my mind racing. When I reached my room, I locked the door and sat on the bed, staring at the hallway through the crack under the door. I couldn't see anything, but I felt that heavy, oppressive feeling of being watched. And then I heard it, a creak on the stairs. Someone's in the house, I whispered into the phone. The operator's tone shifted, more urgent now. Stay where you are. Officers are almost there. Do not engage with them. The creaking grew louder, closer. Whoever it was, they were moving slowly, deliberately. My grip on the knife tightened. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. And then a voice I knew all too well called out, "Alex, it's me, Josh. Open the door." "Josh," I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. My brain struggled to process what I was hearing. Josh wasn't supposed to be back until later that day. He couldn't be here. "Yeah, it's me," the voice said again. "Come on, Alex, open the door. I forgot my keys." The words were casual, but something about his tone was wrong. It lacked the usual warmth, the easygoing nature I knew so well. I tightened my grip on the phone. "How did you get in?" There was a pause, just long enough to make my skin crawl. "The back door," Josh replied. "It was unlocked. That was a lie. I had checked every lock before I sat down in the living room." "I don't believe you," I said, my voice trembling. Another pause. Then the voice changed, still Josh's, but colder, almost mocking. "Don't be like this, Alex. Open the door. We need to talk." I pressed the phone to my ear, desperate for reassurance. "He's at my door," I whispered to the operator. "He says he's my roommate, but something's not right. Please, hurry. They're less than 2 minutes away," she promised. "Stay on the line. Don't open the door." The knob jiggled. My heart leapt into my throat. "Alex," the voice said again, louder now. "You're freaking out over nothing. Just open the door." I backed further into the room, shaking my head even though he couldn't see me. This wasn't Josh. It couldn't be. But whoever it was, they knew how to sound just like him, Alex. The voice bellowed, the calm veneer cracking into frustration. The door shook violently as he pounded on it. I said, "Open the door." I flinched, every instinct screaming at me to run, to hide, to do anything but stand there frozen in fear. And then, as suddenly as it started, the pounding stopped, silence, the crack under the door showed nothing but darkness. I strained to listen, but all I could hear was my own rapid breathing. "Are you still there?" the operator asked, her voice grounding me. "Yeah," I whispered. He stopped. "I think he—" A loud crash downstairs cut me off. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the house, followed by heavy footsteps. Whoever was at my door wasn't waiting anymore. "They're inside," I hissed into the phone. "Stay where you are," the operator said, her voice urgent. "Officers are seconds away." I backed into the corner of the room, the knife shaking in my hand. My eyes darted between the door and the single window, calculating if I could climb out. Before I could decide, I heard another voice, this one amplified and commanding, Greenridge Police. "Come out with your hands up." Relief flooded me. The footsteps downstairs stopped abruptly. The tension in the air was palpable, like the entire house was holding its breath. Then the pounding returned, this time on the front door. "Police," the voice barked. "Open the door." The house went deathly silent. Whoever was inside wasn't moving anymore. I stayed where I was, clutching the phone like a lifeline. And then I heard it. A low, chilling laugh, so close it felt like it was coming from inside the room. The laugh froze me in place. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakably close inside the room with me. My breath caught in my throat as I whipped my head around, knife raised, scanning the dim corners of the room. It was empty. At least, that's what I thought. The police were shouting downstairs, their commands echoing through the house, but I couldn't focus on them. My entire body was locked in fight-or-flight mode, every nerve on edge. Slowly, I edged toward the window, my eyes darting to every shadow, and then I saw it, a shape in the corner, hunched and barely distinguishable from the darkness. My heart stopped. It hadn't been there before. "Alex." The voice was low, guttural, and unmistakably Josh's, but this wasn't him. I knew it. I didn't wait to find out what it wanted. I bolted for the window, throwing it open and scrambling out onto the roof. The icy night air hit me like a slap, but I didn't care. I was halfway across the roof when I heard the door to my bedroom burst open behind me. "Get back here," the voice bellowed, deeper and more distorted now. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The sound of heavy footsteps on the roof chased me as I slid down to the edge, barely catching myself before I fell. I hung there for a second, feet dangling, before I dropped to the ground with a painful thud. Blue and red lights flashed across the yard. I stumbled toward the officers, shouting incoherently. They rushed toward me, guns drawn, shouting commands I couldn't process. "He's in there," I finally managed to scream. "He's inside." The officers stormed the house, their shouts and the crackle of their radios blending into chaos. I collapsed onto the lawn, gasping for air, clutching my side where I'd landed hard. Minutes felt like hours as I sat there, staring at the front door. Finally, the officers emerged, but they weren't dragging anyone out. "There's no one inside," one of them said, his brow furrowed. "We searched the entire house." "That's impossible," I shouted, scrambling to my feet. He was in my room. He was right there. The officer exchanged a glance with his partner, then looked back at me. "Are you sure, sir? We found no signs of forced entry. Just you. And this." He held up something in a plastic evidence bag. My stomach churned as I recognized it immediately. The landline phone, its receiver dangling by the cord. "No," I whispered. "That doesn't make sense. I talked to someone on that phone twice." "We checked the line," the officer said, his tone careful. "It hasn't been connected for months.